So today, first day of math, and it's about learning how to understand what I mean if I say this. Everybody please just copy this down. X where X is greater than 7. And the little scripties. I should make this one better in the front. Kind of look like an E. That's called set notation. And that just says, I have a set of numbers that I'm calling X. And X can be anything that's bigger than 7. Does that make sense to you so far? Okay, so like if you're going to put it on a number line, would you everybody please make a number line underneath it? Would you graph that on the number line? Just use one number, the key number. I don't need you to number it all the way from 0. That was what you did maybe when the first time you learned how to do a number line. But just put the one key number on here. And then if you don't know how to do the rest of it, and I'll show you, graph that on a number line. Now, I want you to get to know that kid next to you. And I want you to just compare answers and see if you have the same things they do. And even subtle little things that are different can matter a lot on graphing. Like, I don't want to say them because I don't want to bias you towards what the right answer is. And so first off, these two rows, it's going to person right across from you, except at the back there where you two have to compare front and back. These two rows is the person straight across from you. And these rows, I will hook you up here. I'm going to pause the video. Okay, and by now, enough people have said it out loud that people are kind of hearing the word, that just having this like this is not quite right. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Open circle is correct. Why? Why does it matter? Well, if you have a filled-in circle, you're implying that it can be 7. And math is really picky, you know. It matters. I specifically said X had to be bigger. X had to be bigger than 7. It couldn't be equal to. If I meant that, I would have had to put a line right there and say greater than or equal to. Go ahead and do that and make the appropriate change to the graph then, please. All right, we got this filled in then, right? Okay. Now, I'm going to give you a little more complicated one. X where X is less than 7 is intersected with X is greater than 5. Just stepped up a notch there. Now, the way I want you to show me that you really understand that is make me a number line for it. Now, there are 3 ways to write these answers. The top thing that I've been writing, that's called set notation. And I did say the word, and I'll say it again, that's intersect. If you know what intersect means, it's like a street intersection of 2 roads. Okay, that's what intersect means. And there's another symbol that's kind of like that we have to learn. But that whole thing, that's called set notation. The red one is the number line, and then there's a third way to do it. If you're really good, tell me the third way. Ooh, Sam.
Writing the range and domain.
Oh, like a range and domain. Kind of. Can you be more specific? Like do you mean, would I have a couple numbers, commas, parentheses? I mean, what are you talking about? Just like range is this, domain is that?
Well, the range would usually be the y-axis, and then the domain is the x-axis.
Okay.
So we just use domain here. And then if it's we use parentheses.
You are talking about that. Excellent. So he's talking about something like that, where you'd have 2 numbers in there. And if you don't know what I mean, I totally get it. This may be new to many of you. But there's a way to write this with a number here and a number there. And then brackets and parentheses are different than each other. Brackets mean that it touches that number, and parentheses means that you don't touch the number. Like that 5. Do we touch the 5? No, because it says it's bigger than 5. So it's not equal to 5, it's bigger than 5. So you don't touch the 5. All right. But before we do it that way, let's just see if you got it with the number line. Once again, I'd like you to compare with the kid next to you. See if you got the same thing as they did. Pausing for a second. All right, and you guys are handling the other part really well. Just make sure that you understand that, you know, just because the first two you didn't know how to do and the kid next to you did, it's going to flip around sometimes. Sometimes you're going to know what's going on and they're not. So just be really gentle and nice. And if somebody doesn't get it, just show them, I think this is how you do it, you know, like give them a little help. It's going to reverse roles at some point. All right, so here was x is less than 7. Here's a 7, and here's less than 7. And I'm going to draw it like that. And it would keep going forever. And notice I didn't fill in the 7. I'm going to use a different color here. And I'm going to say here's 5, and here's bigger than 5. Now, the intersection is kind of like, you know, this school, Minnetonka High School, is really near the intersection of 101 and 7. And 7 goes east-west, and 101 goes north-south. If you're in the intersection, do you get your right there? If you're in the intersection, you're where those two roads cross. If you're in here, you could legitimately say, I was on 101, or you could say, I was on 7, because you're on both of them, right? You know what I mean? So that's the intersect part. So this is the part that's your answer. It's where they overlapped. And then to finish off your answer, you need to get rid of these parts. Your answer is only what's between the 5 and the 7. Does that make sense to you? Okay, that's an intersection. What if I had said union? I'm going to change this now to be a U for union. If I had made this a union, don't even do it. Don't do it. Just listen. Because I don't want your notes to be all backwards. Because now that's not the right answer anymore, is it? Union would mean everything in the whole group. It's like the union of 101 and 7 means every car that's on Highway 101, including every car that's on 7, and you don't like exclude the ones in the middle. It's every car. Unions are big, okay? So a union is like the Union of the United States of America. It was all 50 states growing together, and we're just going to be one big group, and all of us are included. So if you were in Massachusetts, then you were in the Union, and if you were in Florida, you were in the Union, and so anyway. So back to these symbols here are really important to understand. So let's actually go off and define them separately. Union, and it means the word or. A lot of people think that that's the wrong word. Shouldn't you be meaning and? Because like everybody's in it, you and you and you. Nope. Union means or. And I like to put one letter on each peg of the U just to remind you that's or, not and. Because if I said, I want anyone who was on 101 or 7, do you get how that matches up with or? Anybody who's on 101 or 7 is included in my group. If I said everyone who's on 101 and 7, then it would only be the intersect, right? So this is and that's called intersect. And I like to squeeze a little A here and a little D there, and if you use a little imagination, you can think of that like an and. Okay? So intersects are ands, unions are ors. So let's make sure you really get this. I'm going to give you another set of numbers. This time, I'm not going to do it in set notation or, wait, one more thing. Somebody already knew how to do this with a parenthesis, and it was 5 and 7. Nice work, Sam. Do you get that this is the easiest way to write the answer? It's the fastest. And the answer was between 5 and 7, not including 5 or 7. What if I had wanted to include 5 or 7? Because if these had been or equals here and here, if they had been or equals, I would have made brackets there and there. So that's another thing I want you to have in your notes. A bracket means this includes that number. And if it's a parenthesis, that it means it excludes the number next to the parenthesis. So those are the key things. And today's pretty easy. So now it's just about, do you really get everything that I just taught you? Can you put it all together? There's 3 ways to represent sets. You can either say, well, there's actually probably more than that, but these, actually you can just list out all of the numbers that are in the answer. But, you know, that's could be a little difficult, especially if you include all the decimals that are in between them. All right? Okay, so these are the 3 common ways to write your answer, and we usually let you answer with any of the 3. You can either give me set notation, that's called set. That is called a number line, of course. And then this one, you said domain and range, but that's not actually what we call it. Does anybody know what we call it? Interval notation. Interval notation. The interval between 5 and 7. And then the only complicated part is, did I want to include 5 or did I want to include 7? So of course we can make these much more complicated. I'm starting with the easy ones, so let's just do a couple more easy ones. Make sure you got the basics, and then we'll get into harder ones. Okay, so let's say I had the numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8. And that's going to be set A. And let's say set B is the numbers 8, 9, 10, and 11. Would you please write out, don't say the answer, would you write out the answer to this? A, that symbol I'm not saying the word for, B, and then how about this? What is the answer? And this time, I'd like you to just list the elements of the answer. You don't have to put it in any of those special fancy forms. You don't have to put it on a number line. You don't have to put it on a set notation or in an interval. You can just list them. That is a legit way to write the answer. When they give you individual elements like this, you can just list the answer. So what's A, and what's that word actually? This first one, A what B? Intersect, good. What is the answer? 8, because that's the one that overlapped. They both had that. It's like 2 roads that overlapped on the 8. Okay, and this one's a union. I tried to say unions are big answers. And that's like an or, but I know that seems counterintuitive, but if I said, are you in this set or in this set? Well, all these numbers could say, yeah, I'm in this or that, right? So they're all in your answer. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 is the union. Make sense so far? If you think I'm wrong ever, please raise your hand and say, wait a minute, I feel like something's wrong here because it's possible that I could be making a mistake. What do you think? Look at that. It was covered up. We couldn't see it, but yes. So say something like, when you see something, say something. It's like they say at the airport. You see something, say something. You know, what they're trying to say is like, you see some guy who like flops his backpack off and you're a big group of people and then kind of briskly walks away from the backpack.
Same cigar.
You should say something, okay? It's possibly just leaving his backpack next to his friend who's supposed to watch it, but if you feel like there's a chance, you're supposed to say something. Okay, so same thing in math. You're gonna find that I will it was covered up, you know, I was over here, I couldn't see the 11, but I had said that there was an 11 in this. Okay, and otherwise, if you're sitting there confused, some other kid's also going, what? And it'll help everybody. All right, so I'm going to give you one in set notation one more time and see if you've got this. This is going to be a little more tricky. What if I said x where x is bigger than 8 union with x is less than 7? I think when I'm given a choice, I personally will always make a number line. And you'll get your choice a lot. So I encourage you to choose the number line answer. Because it's the easiest one to like, when you're complicated, use a number line. Draw it out. And then like, you'll know, is this where they're supposed to overlap? Or is this where it's supposed to be intersect or kind of reason it out. If you want the fastest to right answer, that's interval. All right, again, I'd like you to compare to the person sitting next to you. I'll pause while people do that. Okay, I'm almost trying to judge when you guys have already compared. So
Anyone decided to write in all the numbers?
here's the 7, here's the 8, and x is bigger than 8. That goes like this. And I'm just doing it roughly, quickly at the beginning. X is less than 7, here's 7, and less than 7 is that way. And these don't intersect. I think we're trained to look for where they overlap. And some people go like, well, they don't overlap, so there is no answer. No.
You could argue that may be wrong.
If this had been the intersect symbol, then that would have been the right answer. Weirdly, if they had said, where do these intersect, your answer would have been no solution. There wouldn't have been an answer. The answer would have been nothing. You might have thought the answer would be like what we have on the screen, but it wouldn't. All right, so our question again was union, and so our answer is everything that is up there. How would you have written that with parentheses? I'll give you a hint. You'd have 2 parentheses and a union between them, and it'll involve infinity and negative infinity. Everybody give it your best shot. I'm going to pause for a second. Write that out with infinities, negative infinities, 2 sets of parentheses, unions. Pausing. Okay. Now, some people will have disagreements on which order this goes in. There is a right answer. It goes from negative infinity to 7. Think of it this way. That's where negative infinity lives. And so you put them in order from smallest to biggest. Negative infinity to 7, union 8 to infinity. Now, some people try to put brackets on the ends. You can't, because that would be saying that infinity itself is included, like as if it was a number. Infinity is not a number. Infinity is a concept. So you can't include, you will never ever put a bracket on infinity, because that means you like trapped it, and infinity's a number, but it's not. So you always put parentheses on infinity, so that's an always. So yay. You can remember that. You never would use brackets there. All right. That's called, say it if you know it. What notation? Interval. How about this one? Number line in this one? Set. All right. So how could it possibly get more complicated? Oh, there's a lot of ways. What if it was x's and y's? So everybody go like this, set notation, where it's x comma y, where I'll tell you something about the x, and I'll tell you something about the y. Then the x needs to be bigger than 2. And if I say this, I should say and, not or would be the other way. And the y needs to be less than 1. Now on this one, I would need you to make a graph for it, but since it has an x and a y, do you get we're going to have both an x and a y axis? I'll sketch what you think the answer is. I haven't showed you yet. This is stretching you. Put it all together. Best guess on how this would look. All right. I know there's enough people who are not sure what's going on that I don't want to make you try to explain it to the kid next to you, so I'm going to show you this one. Some of you will have gotten it. So, where is x2? Well, let's say I say that x is 2 right there. Okay? And so, should I put a dotted line there? Hint, it's like, should I put an empty circle or a filled in circle? Should I put a dotted line at 2? Or should I put a solid line at 2? Do you feel like this includes 2 or not?
You put a dotted line.
It does not include 2. So you put a dotted line at 2. Okay? And then x is bigger than 2, so that's going which way? To the right or to the left? To the right. So you're going to shade this way. Now, I don't shade over the whole graph. I just kind of shade a little bit to the right of the line, so I know I'm going to go to the right. All right. Next, I'm going to look for the y line. Would you agree that this is where y is 1? Except I just did a solid line. That would imply that it includes 1, and it really should have been a dotted line. So I'm going to go back in, and if you ever do this, you can always make it a dotted line by just erasing parts. Although I think you guys, when you touch the line on erase, doesn't it just erase the whole line?
You can make it partial.
Oh, you can? Okay, cool. There you go. Now it's a dotted line at 1. And which way should I go on this? Should it be under it or over it? Well, what does that feel like to you? Under it. And so I'm going to shade under it the whole way, because this is intersect. Wait. I shouldn't shade under it over here, should I? Think about it for a second. I mean, that's under the line, but it's supposed to be both things. It's supposed to be that and that. So it'd be okay if you had started your answer like this. But your final answer is going to be where they overlap, which is in that zone there. And then on a test, I would expect you to erase out the parts that are not right. Because why aren't these parts right? Because they aren't below the green line. Why aren't these parts right? Because they aren't the intersection. They aren't what's to the right of 2. They are to the left of 2. So I erase those out, and there's my final answer. That's how they get complicated.
If it's not to the left of 2, it's to the right of 2, or it's 2.
Correct. If I said it wrong, I apologize. But what you just said is correct. Okay. So I'm going to give you one more of the hardest kind, and then I'm going to feel like you are really ready. So here's one more of the hardest kind. I'm drawing you the picture. You have to write me the set notation. So I'm saying I want something where there's a dotted line here at 3, and I'm shading to the left of it. And that's all I want. Just that. Can you write the set notation for that? They always have little scripty things. They always have a colon, and then they describe what variables we're talking about. And I want to give you a pro tip here. I know some of you are going to go, oh, it's just x is less than 3. No, it's not. Because these have an x and a y axis, don't they? I mean, if this had only been a single number line, then it would just be an x-axis. This has a y-axis. It's just that the y could be anything. See what I mean? I didn't put any restriction on y. Y could be anything. Y could be super big, super small. Doesn't matter. So a lot of kids would have put this, x where x is less than 3, and I'd say that's a pretty good start, but it really wasn't. It was a two-dimensional graph. So it was x comma y, understanding that part? Because it was a two-dimensional graph. And y didn't have any restrictions. So could I put that y goes from negative infinity to positive infinity? Sure, but I don't have to. I don't have to say anything about y. And by not saying anything about y, I'm saying y can be anything. So I don't have to define y has to be this. If I don't say anything about y, then I'm not saying anything about y. It can be anything. Yes?
What if you just write y with nothing like attached to it?
Then I would be conflicted on how to grade that.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I probably would have just said, oh, that's weird, but I'll give it to them. But don't do that. Just specifically don't say what y is, and you'll be saying it can be anything. Or if you want to go the extra mile, then say y can be, here's how I could say it, y could be anywhere between negative infinity or positive infinity. You could have said that and snuck that in there, and it would have been okay, but a lot of extra work for nothing. All right, you just got through some really hard ones, and most of your assignments going to be easier than that. Those are like the beasts at the end that are really hard, okay? So I'm hoping you're feeling like this isn't that bad. So I'm going to give you 3 kind of normal representative problems. An easy, a medium, and a hard, okay? And I'd like you to check with the kid next to you if you get the same answers as them, all right? So this is A, B, and C, and let's see how you do. On A, I'm going to give you a set notation that's going to just be x, where x is greater than 6, intersect x is greater than, it's a greater than sign, sorry, greater than 8. It's not super easy, but it shouldn't be impossible. Hint, use a number line to give your answer. Once you draw it on a number line, you'll see where they intersect. It's not that hard. I think I actually gave you a medium there, but here's another medium. I'm going to give you a number line. It's got a filled-in circle at 5 and an empty circle at 9. Can you write me the set for that? Notice it didn't have any y-axis, just x. And then the last one, it's x comma y, where x is greater than -2, and y is less than or equal to 3. All right, give that your best shot. In a moment, take your time, because these are tricky little detail-oriented answers, and check with the kid next to you. So on the recording here, one of the students asked, I really should have put a symbol in there, and they're right, I should have. But I think there's a couple on the homework where they don't put a symbol in there. Assume it's a union if they don't put a symbol. All right, I'm going to pause for a second. So I should also tell you what your homework is. I know you can't get to it right now. And so I'm going to make it simpler. I'm going to move the Schoology quiz to a different day. That there's a Schoology quiz in there. I'm going to move that to tomorrow, so you don't have to do that tonight. Okay? There is notes in there, and the homework is at the end of the notes. There's only one PDF. If you can find the PDF once the internet eventually comes alive again. I mean, if it never does, yay, you don't have to do it. But if the internet comes back, which it probably will, there's a set of problems at the end of the notes, and you'll be able to see them. They're just the last couple pages. And you should do those. That's your homework. It's just problems like we just did. You'll recognize that, oh, these are like we just did. Okay, so that's your homework for tonight. And if the internet doesn't come back, then you don't have any homework. All right, there's just always going to be 1 or 2 kids that didn't get the memo from yesterday. Yesterday there was a routines quiz, which you could retake multiple times. If you had issues with that or whatever, let me know. But at this point, it'd be me putting in a 0 if you haven't done it yet. What does that mean? That means that you can still do it, but it's going to be late, but I'll still take it. I can't take it forever, but I can at least still take it up until the test. All right. So your homework, find the notes. Problems are at the end of the notes. All right. Now, if you haven't already, please now, no matter how far you are, compare with the kid next to you and see if you got A the same, B the same, maybe all 3. Okay, here's the final results. You should have said for this first one that it's between, here's x is bigger than 6. Well, here's 6, and bigger than 6, empty spot there, and it would be going to the right. Greater than 8. Oh, well, here's 8, and bigger than 8. I'm going to extend this bigger than 6 out a little further. And then here's my bigger than 8, and it goes like that. And what does this symbol mean? Intersect. Where do they intersect? From the 8 on. So if I was going to make a summary final answer, it's just from the 8 on, and not including the 8, because they don't actually both have 8 in them. This one has 8 in it, but this one does not. So don't include the 8. So there's your final answer on A. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. Next one, the B. Did you write that correctly? Well, it's X only, because there was no Y, where X had to be bigger than or equal to 5, and Y, no, there was no Y. The other X had to be less than 9, and 9's an empty circle, so I just leave it as less than. And is it where they overlapped, or was it all of them? It was where they intersected or overlapped, so I put an intersect symbol. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Sweet. Then part C. This is a X and a Y graph, so I make both. And now here's an X is less than -2. Well, here's where -2 is. And less than that means shading that way. Okay, and now I got to go to Y is less than 3. Well, here's where Y is 3. And or it's or equal to 3. So I go through with a solid line at 3. And it's where they are unioned, which means everybody, wait a minute, that's less than and equal to 3. Sorry, I should shade this way. Now it's everything that has been shaded. So your final answer is, was it shaded there? Yeah, it was shaded there. It was shaded in here both ways, which is extra good, but you know, all it needs to be is shaded. That was shaded, and this was shaded, so it's all of those areas. The only thing that shouldn't have been shaded is up in here. Yes?
It says X is smaller than -2.
Wait a minute. Oh, I shaded. Oh, you should have stopped me earlier. X is greater than -2, so I'm sorry. I should have had this going to the right. Ay. Now I have to change the whole thing, and I'm blaming you, Sam. All right. Did you notice something like that? Catch me earlier, please. I'm going to just go over to the side. X is greater than -2. Here's -2. Greater than goes this way. And then Y is less than 3. Here's where Y is 3. And less than 3 goes this way. And now it's whoa. Yeah, now it's everything that has been shaded. So basically the only thing that isn't shaded is this area up here. Everything else was shaded in some way. And yes, I know they overlap, but we don't care because the symbol was a union. Okay, that was intense, but considering we had no notes, no internet, I think that's not a bad first day. So do your homework tonight. There's going to be a Dropbox. There might not be right this second, but hey, I can't tell because the internet's down. But and I was going to assign you something else, but again, I might have mercy considering that we have a weird day starting with no internet. So I will strip that out of the homework too. So just this one set of notes, problems at the end. That's all I got for you for today.